And briefly, we talked about how in Module 4, dialogue's great because it gets your character in contact with other people. But in theory, there's no actual rubric block that checks or doesn't check whether or not you use dialogue. So I can't really score you down if you don't, but I really recommend you get outside of your character's interiority and get them in connection with other people or nature or something. See how quickly I could have said that if I was trying harder. Okay, I wanted to briefly talk to you about Jumpstart writing. And what I thought I would do is pop you into this. Oh, and does it show like a half a screen for you or does it show the whole screen? Let me make this bigger. There we go. So I want to talk about what Jumpstart writing is. And part of the reason I'm doing this, and when I put this up in the YouTube video, I'll put this in the comments about it. And it's pretty great because this is the way that if you have, some kind of mental resistance to getting writing, if you do this exercise, and 10 minutes is when you're on your own. We're going to do more like 5 or 6 minutes here. If you do this exercise, your brain will end up writing something. So when we get started writing today, I will give you a prompt. And then this was advice I gave to a student. She actually just asked me for it again, which is why I had it handy. But doing it in handwriting is the best way to cross the hemispheres of your brain and really get your full creative action. It doesn't mean you need to do all your writing. I do writing and typing all the time, but sometimes when I'm trying to get ideas, I do it by hand. You don't have to today, but if you pick up this exercise to do later, I recommend doing a handwriting exercise to see what happens differently. I can find the article if you need it to show you that your brain does engage differently when you're using handwriting instead of typing. So only allow your time to finish words, sentences, like start writing and don't stop picking up your pen, basically. I mean, you do to get from word to word, but just keep writing. And if your brain won't come up with something, just keep writing over and over again. I can't think of something. I can't think, whatever it takes to bore your brain until your brain's like, fine, just stop writing the same thing over and over again. Here's something. And then when you're doing this on your own, you could get prompts. Poets and Writers has a great page full of prompts, or you can just start with a declaration and think of your characters. So you each had 3 story ideas that you turned in this week, and you probably have one that's floating to the top of your favorites. So as I'm talking for the rest of this, be thinking about your character that you think you're going to have as your narrative point of view. And you might start with a declaration, So an example of that is, if Sandy had known today would be the last day of her life, she might not have taken out the trash, right? Because who wants to be doing mundane chores on the last day of your life? So you think of a declaration. You might start with a question. How could Janine know that harmless looking credit card bill would change everything about her life? And then you just keep going. Or start with an action. So if you think of this as like camera, lights, action, it's a declaration, a question, or an action. And the example of an action is, and this is actually from the novel that I'm working on, Willow heaved the western saddle on Murphy's broad back. That's like just an action she's doing, and they're getting ready to go for a trail ride, right? So then as soon as you've thought up what this is, write and start your timer. And this is the way that you can make the kind of jumpstart I'm doing now with you on your own. Does that make sense? Again, when I send back out the email that says the recording's up, I'll just hit reply all to make sure I get Dominique and Jamie in it. When you go to my YouTube channel, you can find these again in the comment section. Okay. I'm not a YouTuber, so it's just amazing that I can do any of this. And then let's see. I think that's it for now. Do you feel comfortable about what we're going to do in the timed writing? And I know I sent out the email, and Joe Sandy was here last time we did it, but you'll write, and then we encourage you to read back what you wrote. And again, we know, right? I mean, we've all done a timed writing prompt. It may not be your best writing. It probably won't be your best writing, but it's really fun to hear what everybody ended up with, especially because you have the same writing prompt. But you also don't have to write to the prompt. As long as writing happens, that's all that matters. But I want to encourage you to read at the end if you can. If you can't, that's fine too. I mean, you're not required to, but it's part of the fun in it. And I don't write during this time because I'm monitoring the clock and I'm distracted. So, okay. Do you feel like you know what's going on? Great. I am pulling up. And when I get done giving you this prompt, I will throw it in the chat so you have it to look at for next time. And I mean, for while you're writing. And this time, I'm sure I was laughing because last time I put it in the chat and I didn't hit enter. So there was nothing to look at. It was not helpful at all. So this first one, I love this so much. My friend Kelly Tanner Backenroth taught me this technique called improv writing prompts. And what you do, and I'm at my uncle's house where there is internet, and thank goodness we're all big readers in my family. So I found The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night for me to use. But how this works, if you're ever doing it in your own writing groups or with your friends or whatever, is I will begin you with a prompt, and then I'm going to come in very quickly, like every 15 to 20 seconds. I'm going to open up a page and be like, physics. And you need to try to put physics into whatever you're writing. And it's hard and fun, and it's crazy because it fires your brain in directions you weren't intending. And that's, what we're trying to do with this writing prompt stuff. So actually, I don't need to put the prompt in the chat because you aren't going to just be sitting and writing. I'm going to be coming back in, but that means I need to set up my clock really quick. Are there any questions going into this, or does it make sense? Makes sense? Okay. I'm setting my clock for 6 minutes. We're going to play around with this. I'm going to have you write down however you're typing or writing. I want you to write, "It was fun being." And that's what you're going to start with. You can do this, nonfiction stuff and then translate it into a character, or be thinking of your character now. We're going to start with, "It was fun being." And when I start, I'll say, "On your marks, get set, go." About 20 seconds later, I'm going to come in with the first word, and good luck with this. Okay, everybody feeling good? On your marks, get set. It was fun being. Mystery. Fork.
What was the second word?
Fork. I'll put them in the chat. Licorice, not spelled like I just spelled it. Wrong. Garden. Sausage. Dogs. Train. Pocket. Atoms. Collide. Virus. Liar. Blade Runner. We have a minute left. Your last one is crouched. Okay, do your best to start wrapping things up. All right, that's been an extra full minute, so we definitely have to stop. How amazing was that? I can't even imagine. I can't wait to hear what you wrote. I mean, this list of words. That's what's so fun is you just like flip it open and pick a word, or if there's a really cool one right next to it, I pick that one. But this one was interesting because I actually haven't read it yet. I have it and haven't read it yet, but I believe it's about an autistic kid. And what's great about it, but difficult for this exercise, is I love it when really strong verbs show up because that helps you write unusual stuff. And this kid, the person, Mark Haddon, who wrote this, is using very simple verbs because it's a first person narrative from this kid's point of view. And just Sandy says it's amazing. All right, so is anybody feeling up to being the first person to share what you got? I can see Joe Sandy smiling. Are you the one, or you were the one? No pressure is all.
Okay. Just we were supposed to incorporate the word that you threw out as we were writing.
If you could, yeah.
Okay. I think I missed, but it's fine.
It's fine. As long as writing happened, that's all that really mattered. So we'll go with you, and then Cyrus popped up in the chat, and he'll go after you. And everybody, just be listening for what stands out for you. And like, if something's kind of amazing, be sure that, we'll talk about it like out loud from there. And, or you can put it in the chat if you're not comfortable talking. And one more thing, what am I trying? Oh, be thinking in terms of what we do in this class. We're grading on narrative arc. We're grading on character, figurative language, setting, how well you do your grammar. I missed one. Narrative arc, character development. Oh, narrative voice, point of view. Okay. So be paying attention to that. You can pop it in the chat. We can talk after she goes. But as we discussed, and just Sandy knows this, it's really important to be able to read as an author. If you get published, you'll eventually be expected to read somewhere. So this is fantastic, low stakes practice. Okay, your turn, Jessica.
Okay. It was fun being in the middle of a midlife crisis or an existential crisis, whatever you want to call it. My own mind was a mystery to myself. Hurry up, grab everything, she said. I hastily grabbed the fork, the licorice, the tarp rope, our gloves. What I didn't realize was we'd made a terrible error. Nothing felt wrong as we walked away from the small garden in the dead of night. But we later realized there, next to the body, was a single fingerprint on a small can of Vienna sausage, one the dogs would find on its side in a few hours. A train rumbles past us as I reach into my pocket, and then I ran out of time.
That's okay. That's okay. You're doing great. Really, really great. What do y'all think?
I love that you came up with the thumbprint on the can, like that you were going down this mystery route, and I wanted to see how that with the midlife crisis or whatever we're gonna come together. The sort of detective-like story with somebody who's having such a rough time themselves. Okay.
I was impressed by how much conflict you were able to kind of bring together. I mean, you started with that internal conflict right away that can really take a story with that at the basis. So well done.
Anyone else? Yeah, so and you put dialogue in it, which is amazing. I'm positive this story is going somewhere. She's putting her hand in her pocket to pull out the Vienna sausages to snack, and she's going to realize she left them behind and that there's a fingerprint on them, and it's going to give away everything. It's pretty cool. Like, I can believe the narrative plot. That's the narrative arc, right? It's stretching out in front of you, and it has an inciting incident beginning with the existential crisis, right? That's I'm just so impressed. And this happens every time. And it surprises me, except for, when I do it, the same thing happens, but I'm still surprised because y'all are so creative. Thank you. Okay, so Cyrus, what'd you get?
Oh, I was going to attempt to screen share, but it's been disabled. So I thought if people would like to read along.
I just don't have it set up, but do you mind reading it today? Because what I love is that when we read as authors, usually the people don't have it in front of them. So it's a different impact when they're taking it in.
No, I got you. So I will probably have to pause if I do start coughing, but
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just hoping to be able to go like, okay. And then if I had to stop, I could pause for a second.
It's fine. It's fine if you pause.
So prompt was, it was fun being a writer in the age of the computer downfall. How the computers were taken down is a mystery to me. Knowing how to utilize the idea of writing with a pen made it worth it. Stabbing the licorice with a fork, I knew I would be told that this looked wrong, but it was worth it. I was able to twirl up the spaghetti like licorice on the fork as I pondered my thoughts and looked to the garden. I saw the dogs and kids playing. I looked to the kitchen and heard my wife frying up the sausage for dinner. I thought it smelled great. The dogs would think it even more when they come back into the house. Without technology to power all the distractions and having the TV off, I could hear the TV. I could hear with the TV off in the distance. I could hear the train off in the distance is what I should have wrote.
Okay.
Was I able to hear this prior? I realized just now that I had placed the comb for my hair in my pocket and now wondered if the comb's atoms colliding with the fabric of my pocket would catch the virus that had taken down the computers. I knew that I was a liar in this statement and I chuckled to myself. It was plastic on fabric. This is not a Blade Runner type of scenario. This is no Last Atom Standing. I sighed as I stood up and moved to the kitchen, seeing my wife crouched to look under the stove, exclaiming out loud that she dropped the spatula and saw a mouse.
Awesome. Okay, what do y'all think?
I cannot believe you got all those words in there in such a short time. That was incredible.
And without it feeling kind of disjointed, like I think I rambled on my page trying to get all the words in there, but it feels cohesive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I can tell that broke the cohesiveness was the fact that I typed TV instead of train. I didn't realize that I did that after I'd gone through and cleaned up some spelling mistakes.
Oh, you edited. I didn't edit, but I saw when you posted that it was 260 words. I went and found my word count and I was like, oh, I actually got 269. That's amazing. I don't even, hopefully they will have some sort of but I really loved just the idea of a world in which the computers are now gone. Ironically, that you're typing it on a computer probably while you're doing this.
Typing it on a computer, writing it on a tablet. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
All computers are gone and I'm out of a job.
You got a great hook in your first line about the computer downfall. That premise right there makes you want to know more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helped with having last week with the subject matter that we had talked about, getting the 3 stories ready and having that hook in the week prior.
Yeah. No, and it made me think of cursive, you know, how like cursive could be a secret code, right? Because a lot of the much younger people don't know how to write in cursive. And
I want to yell shenanigans because that is totally the school's fault. They removed cursive.
It's interesting. I've shared that Wall Street Journal article about how cursive connects both sides of your brain and helps you actually remember things more. And the students in colleges that have been studied who took notes in cursive rather.
yeah, that's the article.
Yep. I've shared it so many times and so many people have been like, well, our kids never learned it. I'm amazed because in our school district, there's 6 elementary schools and my kids did learn it, but the other 5 elementary schools did not. And that surprises me.
That's fascinating. I think I said last time with Joe Sandy was here. Cyrus, you weren't here, right? I keep thinking, can't remember if you were or weren't. No, it was all.
No, I was
Yeah,
unfortunately
we had something
not
going
here.
on. Yeah. I studied Russian for a while because I was stationed, deployed in Kyrgyzstan. And so I was studying Russian because why wouldn't you? Because you're in a country where they speak it as their business language. And they have a different, you know, the Cyrillic alphabet is different in printing and in cursive. So I had to go back to a bunch of cursive. I studied it for like 2 more years when I was back teaching at the Air Force Academy. I audited the class and my cursive, like my English cursive got great because I had to do so much Russian cursive. I highly recommend just doing cursive like as a meditative act, you know, like maybe editing in it or something. And Jamie, if you have that article super handy, we could throw it in the chat or no. Okay. I'm just going to write a note to myself because I couldn't remember the name of the journal and I should have looked it up, but I will share it in my,
I'll find it right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, no, but you have to read at some point.
I will. No worries.
Okay.
I can find it.
Because I want to share it in when I send out the email that the recording is up, I'll put it in there so that everybody here can just get it out of the chat you can get it in the chat. Whew, losing my mind. Okay, so just Sandy and Cyrus were brave. We have Dominique, Bran, and Jamie.
Go.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay. It was fun being the clown at my uncle's funeral. He was always what people considered an odd duck. His last will and testament was the great mystery in the family until the day he died. What would it contain? Speculations abound. Would it fork into a million different directions like his mind always seemed to? Bonko, he'd shout randomly. Licorice. That man is crazy, people said. He's wrong in the head, I tell ya. Well, what can you do? It's family, I thought back then, as I wandered through his garden, a habitual habit. The sausage he'd served for breakfast had actually been yarn, but he didn't seem to notice. I was starving. The stray dogs that hung about the property, stealing from the garden whenever anything living grew in it, looked at me with longing. The sound of a train approaching sent them scampering away, but they quickly returned, mewling for scraps. I reached into my pocket for anything I could share with the poor things. Here you go, guys, I said, gently tossing them a wedge of cheese. It collided with one's nose. He must have been blind. Hopefully not rabid, I thought. That's a mean virus for any being. Liar, my uncle shouted out the window. I paid him no attention. Blade Runner. Yes, uncle, I shouted back. Blade Runner indeed. He crouched below the edge of the window then, out of sight. I sighed and wondered about what his will would contain, hoping I could win the bet. That prize money would go a long way. That's where we ended.
Wow. Okay, everybody, what do you think?
It was definitely,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that was really clever how you used the uncle to kind of just like throw in some of those words, but also like the other ones like were blended. It really made it like really cohesive. And then you also started off really strong with like being a clown at your uncle's like funeral. It really has you like hooked from the beginning. I literally saw everyone's eyes like widen, like what's about to happen.
I thought the same thing. I was on the Wall Street Journal page and I was like so distracted by hearing that I was like lost in what I was looking at. So that was a great touch for sure.
I was kind of curious if you were going to do, there's been a meme going around in regards to at my funeral, someone needs to come running in with a trench coat and an electronic screwdriver and saying, okay, this is where it gets interesting, kind of thing, where it's the doctor who is kind of the direction that I was expecting with the whole clown aspect at the beginning of your story.
Which Doctor Who?
Tenet, I'm guessing. Tenet is one of my favorites, one of my wife's favorites. She actually has the Build-A-Bear, but I digress.
Well, thank you, guys.
I want to point out the Blade Runner to you too, Uncle. It's just I don't know how that would work in any other conversation other than someone who just rambles and serves yarn as sausage for breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, what a hook. I was like, yes, you used forked as a verb. You had dialogue in there and everybody said everything else I'm thinking of. But yeah, so that's what's fun about where does your brain go when you're being thrown words that you're like, I don't know what to do with them. And you're like, I've got a crazy uncle. He can say all these words. Yeah, it was just a really creative idea. Fantastic. That was fun. Okay, so Bran and Jamie. Jamie's unmuted. It looks like she's next.
I'm glad to go. It was fun being single and childless again in Las Vegas. Drinks, dancing to bad music, and mysterious to the strangers I passed in the casino. I carried a fork in my purse just in case someone's licorice stuck to the bottom of my shoe and I needed to peel it off quickly. I knew pretending to be single out on the town was inherently wrong and mischievous, but I couldn't help the need to escape my house, responsibility, a safe little garden of Eden by the beach. I wanted to see the lights, enjoy a meal full of sausage and a day without walking the damn dog. So I packed a bag, hopped on a train, and escaped for what might be my only chance to get away for the next 6 months. I had $500 in my pocket and 0 plans and felt lighter than ever. The atoms in my body might have been colliding in anxiety, but the virus had kept our family of 4 cooped up in the same small home for too long. I know I'm singing to the choir. We all have been cooped up by this pandemic, but I needed a chance to go somewhere else, be somewhere else, watch a movie I'd never seen, Blade Runner, The Matrix, whatever it was. I could just spend 2 whole days never crouched on the sidewalk, scooping up dog poop with a disposable green bag again. And then maybe when I returned home, I would be grateful for all that I have and the opportunity I have every day to enjoy exercise and my deep community in my pets.
Oh, I need you to read the ending again from After Grateful, because and do it a little slower, because when you're a little nervous and going faster, your words are hard to hear. I saw all of us kind of peeking in to try to listen.
And then maybe when I returned home, I would be grateful again for all that I have and the opportunity I have every day to enjoy exercise in my beach community and my pets.
To exercise in your beach community?
Yeah, I
Okay.
walk the dogs every, yeah.
That was really like, I love all the, oh, I'm not talking yet. What do you guys think?
I'm so sorry, I could not hear it well enough to give feedback.
You want me to take these off and try it again?
Let's try it again with them off. I got maybe 75% of it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody can hear me? Okay. So
Yeah.
sorry.
And you don't have to talk louder. You're even actually maxing out the speaker right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was fun being single and childless again in Las Vegas. Drinks, dancing to bad music, and mysterious to the strangers I passed in the casinos. I carried a fork in my purse just in case someone's licorice stuck to the bottom of my shoe and I needed to peel it off quickly. I knew pretending to be single out on the town was inherently wrong and mischievous, but I couldn't help the need to escape my house, responsibilities, safe little Garden of Eden by the beach. I wanted to see the lights, enjoy a meal full of sausage, and a day without walking the damn dogs. So I packed a bag, hopped on a train, and escaped for what might be my only chance to get away for the next 6 months. I had $500 in my pocket and 0 plans and felt lighter than ever. The atoms in my body might have been colliding in anxiety, but the virus had kept our family of 4 cooped up in the same small home for too long. I know I'm singing to the choir. We all have been cooped up by this pandemic, but I needed a chance to be somewhere else, watch a movie I've never seen, Blade Runner, The Matrix, whatever it was. I would spend 2 whole days never crouched on the sidewalk, scooping up dog poop with a disposable green bag. And then, maybe when I returned home, I would be grateful again for all that I have and the opportunity I have every day to enjoy exercise in my beach community with my pets.
All right. That was better.
Sorry about that. These headphones are cheap.
Yeah, well, I couldn't get mine to work, so there we go. I have a set like Cyrus has kind of at home, but I wasn't going to pack them coming here. So, okay, what'd you think, everybody?
That was so relatable. It
Yeah.
was like realism, but everything that people think about and deal with and struggle with.
I even felt like there was like a little like suspense in there because she's talking about like pretending to be single. So it's like, are you about to get into trouble while you're in Sin City? Like, what's about to happen?
I agree with that. Anyone else?
It definitely feels like there's a lot more unsaid than there was actually said. Like there's room for, like just Andy said, open interpretation to, well, what's going on between the meal of sausages and while you're not picking licorice out of your shoe with a fork or whatever else there may be.
You have anything, Cyrus? Okay. Yeah. Or
No,
do you?
I greatly the sorry, going back to what Brandon had said in regards to what was not spoken, you can definitely still see the picture in your eye or in your mind in regards to what's going on, because you gave enough information to understand where the person, the character of your story should be. And that's one of the things that I tend to always look for when I'm helping with other people, is explaining that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, I could not see it visually. I understand what you wrote, but I could not see it. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and what I would add, I love a couple things, like you had a dichotomy from like $500 in my pockets, 0 plans, like you balance those numbers against each other, which is fantastic. I was like, your character's never seen The Matrix, but anyway. And you went just a little lovely abstract when you talked about why you were lighter than ever, and your anxiety atoms were colliding and then moved back into the material. And that's a great way to bring in big ideas without getting too lost in sort of existential thoughts, which, yes, just Andy, it's fantastic to make your reader like pop into that place, existential, or, atoms colliding, that kind of thing. And then help them attach it to things tangible so they don't get too far lost, but you still take them into big ideas. So that was really fantastic. I particularly appreciated that.
Thank you very, very much.
And then the last thing I was saying, it's not a criticism, it's to tie back to what I was saying at the beginning of this session, which is so far we've stayed right inside that character's head, but it's only 269 words. But right about now, you would put that character in connection with somebody or have an action, like put us directly into scene. What happens when we stay inside somebody's head is we aren't touching and tasting and smelling and doing the things that really put us into a setting like Cyrus was talking about. And that's just super important. And he reminded me of one thing, and you know what? I will type it in the chat because I want to listen to Bran before I talk about it, but you don't need to see it. I'm just making a note to myself. Okay. That was great. Oh, this is so much fun. Bran, what did you come up with? You don't have to read. I don't want to cause pressure.
I rambled a lot,
Okay.
mostly because so the prompt kind of, just before I start reading, the prompt got me thinking of a scenario related to one of the short stories that I wrote or started writing for last week,
Okay.
or this week. And it isn't a world where Blade Runner exists. So,
well, you didn't have
I,
to use it.
I scrambled to try and get that in there, but yeah. It was fun being the only person from the precinct invited to the mystery gala. The mayor sent out invitations with forks and knives on the front. They smelled like licorice and marshmallows. Something was wrong about these invitations. I was trying my best to figure it out and decided to start in the garden. A waiter walked by with a plate of sausage. He offered me one and called them dressed dogs for some reason. A train whistle sounded not far away. It was at the depot. My pocket buzzed. Geraldine. She was off dancing with atoms after she collided with the front room. There was no chance for the virus to spread. Who knew what a liar would say? Did you see Blade Runner in theaters? Why were you crouched behind that car? Some random things you would hear. So when you said atoms, the name immediately entered my mind, not the,
That's
the
fine.
particles.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. That's your whole thing, right?
Yep, that's it.
Fantastic. Okay. What do y'all think?
Again, I like that he kind of got a hook right in that first line. The aspect of being the only one from the precinct invited really got me interested to know more about the scenario. And I don't know if I heard right what he called the hot dogs. I heard dressed dogs, but it made me laugh.
Yeah.
I immediately thought of hot dogs too, and what a fun way to refer to them, which just led me to this whole idea of Geraldine and do they speak different languages, and is this like a way of them speaking to each other with some sort of alternative language that they would both understand or something. I don't know. It's just kind of fun. It's a fun little world you created there for sure.
I think that you use the words like in a really like different way than what like I would have like expected, even like the dress dogs and also like even just Adams, like using it as like the name. Like that was something when I was like, oh, can I use these words in a different way? And I feel like you really did that really well.
It's definitely going into I can definitely tell which story that you had been pulling from, because I had read them, I just didn't comment on them in last week's, and it'll be interesting to see if you actually tie that into your final outcome.
Yeah, I do pretty much the same writing exercises across the modules. I have a, Word document for each time I do this. And some people have come up with stuff they end up using in the class. And they're amazed because 260 words and you can max out at 2,500, it ends up being how well you can edit and compress, right? Bran, you put smell on the invitations. I'm so impressed. I was picturing these invitations that smelled. I mean, yeah, so sensory detail is so important. And all of a sudden I could feel them too. Like I had a textured invitation that I was holding up to my face and smelling. And it just really, caused me to respond. Dress dogs made me laugh out loud, of course, because as a kid, apparently I walked up to the minister or whatever it was at the church that morning and said, we had puppy dog tails for breakfast. So it made me think of how we can describe those things like sausages in our house apparently were burnt puppy dog tails, which is not, And then you were so creative to get the liar to say Blade Runner for you. And how it's the same thing as having a crazy uncle if you're overhearing conversation at a party, right? So look at the things that you can do with dialogue, especially if you get random and weird on somebody, amazing things can happen. So this is really great. And what I wanted to bring up is a thing called contingent reality. And I'll throw that up now. I just didn't want to distract people. And this is a colleague of mine at the Air Force Academy. It's a term I heard from him, Tom Vargas, and he used to study a lot in postmodernism for American literature, really accomplished professor. And he talks about contingent reality because like we're all right here, right now in the same Zoom meeting, hearing the same stories, using the same words in a prompt. We're having a reality moment together. Yet we have all this backstory in our lives, all this history that makes us us. And it means that we interpret what you do differently. I went to burn puppy dog tails. She went to an alternate language between two people who might be developing a relationship. And Cyrus was kind of alluding to this too, which is your reader is going to fill in on setting, and they're supposed to, and they're going to fill in on all kinds of things. And it's great to be conscious as a writer that it's a two-way street. You're going to do so much as the author, but you can count on readers reacting. And you can count on them reacting wrong to your mind sometimes. And it's something you have to build a flexibility for, because people will misunderstand you. And sometimes that points to, like, my brother was reading a piece of my memoir last night. And he's like, so far, we don't actually know that you've lived in this place for a year. It looks like you're unpacking your house right now. So, sometimes when they misunderstand you, it's helpful that you can be more clear. And sometimes it's super cool because your story took them somewhere in their own past, and created this creative moment with them. So when you brushstroke like cool sensory details, especially, of course, the ones we abuse, which are touch, taste, and smell, those are the ones that we write about the least. We're instinctive about writing about vision and what we hear. When you add in those other things, they're just tiny brushstrokes, but like Bran's smelly invitations, smelly in the best ways, had me holding that in my mind and lifting it up to my nose. So you just, you're trying to create a scene that puts your reader in there with you, experiencing those senses and like making their own world, because you couldn't possibly flesh out everything. It's like when you have a favorite book and somebody makes a movie out of it and you decide if they got it or if they missed the details that matter to you, or, So that's what's happening when you write. So contingent reality is a very important thing, I think, to keep in mind and realize that you don't have control over your story at all. You can give them the brushstrokes, but they're going to have their experience. And so you can just make sure the most important details, the ones that your movie couldn't survive without are there. Like, I'm absolutely horrified that they've, so I read Outlander. It's sort of like my guilty pleasure. And I've watched the show, and they've cast this beautiful Katrina Balfe, and she's got these icy blue eyes, and the character in the Outlander series, over and over again, it's her sherry colored kind of gold eyes that make her. So why would you cast somebody that you didn't at least put great contacts in to make the character, right? So anyway, whatever's important to you. I thought that was important to Diana Gabaldon, and then they cast the show and, put somebody in there that didn't have it. Okay, so then we can go two ways now, and I want to ask you what you want to do with these two ways, which is we could improv again, because that was pretty fun, and I just picked different words out of the book. Or I can give you a traditional prompt. I have all kinds of fun things that, like talking about some misheard lyrics, or if you misheard a conversation or whatever, or taking your character on a walk, and we would do literal like sensory detail practice with it. Or we can do this. There's a fun one that's like because, and it's fun because it just keeps going. What sounds best to people? Would you rather do an improv? Would you rather do 6 minutes of straight writing on a traditional prompt?
I lean towards a prompt, and the idea of like misheard lyrics sounds just really interesting to me. But
Okay.
there happens to be, I guess, a Twitter thing my husband reads all the time that's called "Overheard in LA" because
Yeah.
we live in Southern California, and so that just immediately was like, "Oh, that'd be kind of fun." Misheard lyrics.
Does that sound fun for people? Yeah. Okay. So Jamie, you must live kind of near so Peggy DeBreer, and I'll put this name in here, at 8:30 in the morning on weekdays.
Hello?
What happened?
Oh, now you were like the screen froze for a second there.
Oh,
but-
okay. It's maybe my internet. I don't know. At my uncle's house. Peggy DeBreer, I put her in the chat and this is true for all of you. It just happens that she's in Southern California and part of a writing group, obviously. She holds a somatic meditation at 8:30 in the morning. It runs like 45 minutes to an hour. It's free. And anybody can come. You just find her website and then email her Yahoo address there on the website. And it's like this, where you spend maybe 15, 20 minutes in a somatic meditation where she guides you through sort of thinking through your body. And then you have a writing prompt at the end, and you write for about 10 minutes or so, and you all read back to each other. I say I usually do it. I just did this last week. And it's really fun because like Janet Fitch, an actual real good author, is there most mornings. David Francis, who wrote The Great Inland Sea, is there a lot. And there's a bunch of us who aren't anything. And it's a poetry thing, but it helps my prose a ton to be there. There's a bunch of us that don't know much, but do it too. And it tends to be 5 or 6 people, and it's really fun. So because you said you're in Southern California, I wanted to bring her up. Okay, so I have my example of misheard lyric. I'm going to throw this in the chat so you have a chance to absorb it. And mine is, because I'm not very good at hearing lyrics, in her wildest dreams, the lyrics are, say you'll remember me standing in a nice dress, staring at the sunset, babe. Not, say you'll remember me standing in a nice chest, staring at the sunset. And I'm snorting. I'm always picturing her on a beach, but her feet are hot. And she's standing in the ice chest. Or when I was a kid, my mom listened to a ton of Carly Simon, and you know her song, You're So Vain. And you probably think the song is about you. And I always heard, and now I hear on purpose, and all the girls dreamed of, this sounds sausage rolls. And all the girls dreamed of Davy Crockett. Because, when I was 6, Davy Crockett was my kind of guy. Like I wanted to marry a Davy Crockett. So like, why wouldn't, Carly Simon want to too? So, think about things and it doesn't have to be a song, though this does focus on songs. Maybe you misheard something in a conversation that changed, the way you responded to something disastrously. And this is all for you to be able to push to your character if you want, or you can write about it in the first person in your own experience. It's up to you. I'm going to set the clock for 6 minutes and I'm going to cut us off hard so we don't stay too long. I want to be respectful of your time and try not to go past 10:30. Okay. All right. On your marks, get set, write. You have about a minute left. Okay, go ahead and wrap things up, please, as fast as you can. All right, I get a couple of faces looking up. It looks like we're close. How was that sustained writing? How did that go?
I had to find inspiration with the actual song that was stuck in my head, so it stopped playing in my head.
This is my life. I call them song bombs because, you know, they're like IEDs, individual song explosives. I never don't have a song going in my head, and it's torture. All of you too? Wow.
The problem is like with mine, it's actually misheard lyrics that someone put a video to, and it's Fortuna. Oh, it's great. If anyone wants the link, I will submit it for you guys, and you can see the
You
audacity
can put
of
it in
this
the
song.
chat, but I'm not clicking. I mean, the constant bane of my existence is four non-blondes. What's going on? Man, that one shows up all the time.
Nice.
Yeah, actually makes a little cameo in my memoir because the first time it really hit me was when I was deployed in Italy. Yeah.
Isn't it always the song you only know one line of? So you just
Oh
hear
my
that one line
gosh.
over and
Oh,
over.
I finally, it was so bad when I was packing to come down here. I was like, because you know, who did Elton John just pair up with? And they have like the #1 song in the nation right now. I don't know. Anyway, I had Rocket Man in my head, and I was like, you have to look up the lyrics because I just can't do this because I'm like blah 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 blah. Anyway, that's my story. I'm talking too much. I think this means that Cyrus wants to start, is what I felt like in my heart. Is that, what do you think?
Okay, so I'm not actually going to give you guys the title. I will give you the guys the title, and then I will read it, and then I will give you guys the title, and then give you guys the song. Okay, so everyone ready?
Ready.
It was the day of the release of the new cookies at the factory. The elves, known for their delectable windmill cookies made of almond shavings and flour, came forth and smiled as they brought all the people to the center of their bakery. The smell was odd. The smell usually had to deal with chocolate and mints, fruits and nuts, or just marshmallow and sugar. The smell was, however, off. It was like old ketchup, spices that should not belong in a bakery. Something was definitely wrong. The people started to murmur as the elves came out and brought their tray for everyone to try. These cookies were red. Why were they red? These cookies had chunks of something in them. Everyone took them and smelled them, tasting them, and they were salsa. So the title is Salsa Cookies, Windmill Cookies. And that is the YouTube video for O Fortuna Misheard Lyrics.
So I'm going to click. I know I will. Okay, what do y'all think?
I think you built the suspense up a lot at the beginning. I was just like listening, like trying to figure out like the song the whole time.
I am immediately was imagining like the little Keebler elves in their little house making these cookies, and then it smelling like old ketchup. And I was like, oh, what a fun idea. This could just really be blown up into something really kids would get a kick out of, adults would get a kick out of. How random and fun.
I really liked the ending, how it ended up being salsa. And I don't know if this was the intent. I went with the idea of they branched out and tried something adventurous, and it made me think of the elf who wanted to be a dentist instead of a toy maker. So
Yeah.
It is very similar to that, but it also goes back to the fact that if you read anything about fruits and vegetables, a tomato is a fruit. It's not a vegetable. And so that's kind of where I was heading with the fruits and nuts are marshmallows and sugar. And what does salsa have? Has everything in and above itself, fruits, nuts, it can have vegetables.
So a salsa cookie. Do you have anything to add, Brand?
I think we could get salsa cookies marketed for dogs, but not so much for people. I'm still stuck on the ketchup and spices that don't belong together. Like, that's stuck in my head for some reason, and I don't know why.
So here's a bit of trivia. Back in the 50s, there were ketchup cakes made with ketchup and tomato sauce. And people have tried them. People have basically done YouTube videos on them, and they are like, this should not work. This should definitely not work. And they're sitting there eating it all.
So I actually had a friend when we first started having children that was a big believer in not letting your kids have any exposure to sugar. And so she would get really disgusting crackers that were small and round and give them to her children and call them cookies, so that her children wouldn't want cookies if people were to offer them cookies. And she did this over and over again. And I was just dumbfounded by it. And that your story really tied into that for me. Like, oh, this is how you get kids to not want sugar, is to give them something really gross.
It's
That's
so
so fantastic.
Pavlovian.
Yeah. My sister did that, and then my mom babysat and fed them Oreos. Oh, that's still a sticking point in our family. I think the reason Brand's hung up on old ketchup, and I think we were waiting for it for the tension, like Joe Sandy was saying, because that's when you arrived at, we were waiting for a comparison and something that would inspire our senses, and you landed it, right? And that's why I think you're hung up on it, because to me, that was your best moment in what you wrote, because you brought us into the scene. And I was in the tree house thing that the Keebler elves have. Yeah. And we're standing inside that commercial, and all of a sudden it's old ketchup, and it just really landed for me. That was great.
Yeah, I did try to make it vague as to where it was, in case someone was like, oh, well, it's not the Keebler elves, it's these elves and things like that. So that's kind of the reason why I didn't force where it was supposed to be taking place, other than it's the factory.
Right. And copyright, right?
Oh,
We
yeah.
all went Keebler, but you didn't say Keebler, so you're not in trouble. Okay, who would like to go next?
I think I scared everyone away.
I just let people get squirmy. I'm really good at quiet.
I
So
can do that.
thanks to Sandy.
I'm really good at being the one who volunteers when no
That's
one's
great.
and that's my forte. Okay, I hope I can understand my own handwriting. I have so many thoughts in my brain. We'd been on the cruise for 3 days now. 3 days in a blur of conga lines, unlimited bubbles, and I was basically living in a bikini. The dream, if you ask me. 3 days of bliss until right now, karaoke. We kept seeing this couple. We didn't know their names, but the man walks up to us. You guys look like a fun time. Let me buy you a drink. The drinks were free. But still, I found myself saying, sure, you can buy me a drink, as the four of us made our way to the bar. And there I am, 5 shots later. I dedicate this song to Tom and Susan. I point to the couple, whose names I now know are actually Love and Herman. I'm halfway through the song when the music shuts off, leaving just the sound of my slurred voice, not Bon Jovi's, screaming at the top of my lungs. It doesn't make a difference if we're naked or not. Awkward.
Okay, take it away, everybody. What did you hear?
You built this, I mean, obviously knowing that it was going to be over, misheard lyrics. It almost needs that to be the title, so that suspense is automatic from the start of the story. Like, what song is this going to be? What's going to be coming out of this person's mouth during karaoke? 5 shots. This is dangerous. This is bad. Hopefully nobody's recording it.
And they are.
For anyone with anxiety, I think that story really evokes the sense of tension and humiliation that you're always so afraid of will happen. That moment where the background sounds are silent and you're shouting.
My palms are sweating. Did anybody else have a response? Yeah.
Oh, there are heart palpitations just thinking about 5 shots and karaoke at the same time.
Let alone it cutting off and you're singing naked or not. Cringe worthy. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was getting to the point where my brain was going through all of the different songs for karaoke, and it's like, okay, it could be that. Another Bon Jovi songs that you came up with, and it's like, oh, we're halfway there. Oh, Living on a Dare, and my brain was going, okay, maybe she says like hair or fair or mare, and it's like, okay,
It's not dare, it's prayer.
I know it's prayer, but
Okay.
that's where my brain went instantly. That's what I've always heard when it was on the radio.
Okay.
And it was like another misheard lyric, Living on a Dare, and it's like, okay, this song makes sense because it does work, but Living on a Prayer makes more sense. But anywho.
Sorry. Well, I really wanted to narrow in on, Brian, did you have something? I think I just talked over the top of you. Okay. I wanted to narrow in on, this song is dedicated to Tom and Susan, who I now know are named Love and Herman. Yeah. And okay, so I saw Jamie's eyes do what my eyes did when he came over. You guys look fun. Let me buy you a drink. I was 100,000% creeped out by this person. And then after 5 shots, and she later learns, like, I took that into things went all the way south, that, this is a cruise ship and she woke up in the wrong cabin. I mean, to me, you really created a lot of potential for it to be sort of a serious, funny, serious, like, kind of funny how you got there, but the kinds of things that happen to us when we get a little crazy, and we didn't intend to have happen to us. So you had all kinds of other things, like underlying storyline things happening that would open that up to keep going. That story could have gone a lot of directions. And it might be because actually Love and Herman were really sweet people, and they took care of you and made sure you got back to your cabin. I mean, and I don't mean you, I mean your character, the first person character you were writing about. So awesome, because I was so worried for that character. Well done.
I will say, when it started, my brain took me to Gilligan's Island because of the 3 days on the cruise ship. I was like, oh, it's just a 3-hour tour. I don't know why 3 hours and 3 days got crossed in my mind, but first thought was definitely Gilligan's Island.
That's fantastic. See, contingent reality right there. That's really great.
Yeah, I was like sweating because it's like partially true story. I kind of like put the misheard lyric in, but I actually did, like, my first vacation without my parents, and we went on a cruise. And I drunkenly dedicated a song to 2 random people and named them Tom and Susan, not knowing who they were. And much more embarrassing things happened, but like I was like, okay, let me like make like a real scenario and turn it into like a misheard lyric.
That's fantastic.
But yeah.
Well, glad to see you in one piece and doing well. Who wants to go next?
Mine's pretty short, so I might as well get it over with.
Okay.
I couldn't think in the moment of any misheard lyrics, so I just looked up on the internet, and what I found was "Sweet dreams are made of cheese." So I have Ronan looked at the moon, a dream in his heart, like he had on every other night of his 99 years. Somewhere in his boyhood, he could not remember now how old he had been. He vowed to reach the moon before he died. That meant he had 1 year left. His timeout loomed, a black maw of nothingness that would swallow his body and mind and soul, all his memories and beliefs and accomplishments. And he had not yet accomplished the one thing he cared most about, his dream of reaching that wheel of cheese in the sky.
Nice. Nice. All right, what do y'all think? Because there's a sub story going on there that I really want us to talk about.
I think I'm still processing it. I was hearing it, but also kind of reading my own story, which is a mistake. So there's lots of crossed wires all over the place. But cheese is intriguing, no matter when or where.
Or which flavor?
That too.
Who picked up on the timeout? So she's got Ronan, who's 99 years old, and his timeout is coming in 1 year. What does that context tell us? I see Joe Sandy typing in the chat. Jamie?
So, I mean, just this idea that he's like maybe, living out everything that he has left that he wants to live. Like, I mean, and when you think about like sweet dreams are made of cheese, like it sounds silly, but like for people who happen to love cheese but have, dairy intolerances, he's like, all caution to the wind. I'm going to have everything I want, whatever the case may be. But anytime you introduce some sort of a timeout, especially for somebody who's lived so many years before then, what could be left at this point? Or why did that person allow 99 years to pass without doing these things?
Yeah, and so, I mean, I'll hop in just because I was so excited by it. Who or what has a timeout? Is he an AI that is scheduled to function for 100 years, and he knows that at 100 years he stops? And so, and if going to the moon, that wheel of cheese, is so accessible, I believe I'm deeply in some kind of science fiction world that is really different than the world we're in, because these are ways that we don't talk about age. And of course, the name Ronan, other than I've just been reading Emily Rapp Black's Sanctuary, and her son's name was Ronan, but it has often been the kind of name that will pull into something a little more either science fiction or fantastical or something like that. So Dominique, am I anywhere close to reading what was going on?
Yeah, I didn't think AI, but I was thinking future society where there's a limit to your life and then they kill you.
Because we're overpopulation, or right? Yeah. So a dystopian future. And I mean, y'all have to understand that I teach this class a lot, and right now I'm team leading, so I don't have as many people, but usually I have like 42 students. And so I am trained to pick up on these little things, and I love it. I was so excited. I was like, tell me more about this world. So if it's one of your short story ideas, I'm excited about it. Not that I get to read it, but I'm still excited about it.
Yeah, because sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that during the entire process of what you were reading, it my brain instantly kicked back into Wallace and Gromit when they went to the moon to try the cheese. Cheese, Gromit, cheese. And it's just, that's where my brain went into when you were saying that it was based off of the moon and the cheese.
Yeah.
Now, there's an interesting concept with the Ronin samurai, the one without a master. And if it's an AI, is it kind of bucking the rule where it gets put under at that time frame? Or like, is there something else? Also, I had a procedure done on Wednesday, just an endoscopy, and when they gave me the anesthesia, they said, okay, timeout, and then I just went under.
Oh, wow.
So while it didn't click initially, hearing the discussion about the timeout brought that right back, and then it was immediately, there's something coming to an end.
See,
Yeah.
listen to the contingent reality that happens when you write like this.
Or there's some kind of pause happening.
Yeah.
And your idea about the samurai, I'm going to pretend like that was intentional and a dual meaning that I planned on. So go me.
Yeah. And if you're using this story, go research it and see if you can, thread that in. That's fantastic. See so much happens when we do this. I love it. Okay. So we still have Jamie and Bran. Who would like to go?
I can go.
Great.
So I don't know if I necessarily understood the assignment, but we'll read.
Doesn't matter. If you wrote, then it worked.
We were talking about song lyrics at work the other day when the song Rock the Casbah came up. I was flabbergasted and corrected Geo to say it was Catchbox when everyone else turned on me. I could not have been more wrong about the lyrics to the song. Who would rock a Catchbox? What's a Casbah? Does any of this really matter, or is it just all meaningless? And that's the end of it. So I got to about 2 minutes left and had nothing else to write. And I'm like, oh no, what's wrong with me?
Well, that's when you start repeating words, and when you write them down, so your brain goes, no, I can come up with more. And then you just don't read the repeated words. It's very important when your brain is like, and that's it. You're like, no, I'm going to bore you then. This is what we're going to do until you come up with something else. I swear to you. I mean, I have to treat my brain, and I think a lot of people should treat your brains like a partner rather than something that you own, And when they are not playing their part, you just give them a little punishment, kick right in.
Definitely have to brute force the creativity sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brute force and ignorance is how you can usually fix like a physical project, and brute force can help your creativity. Okay.
I love that you picked that song, Brandon, because so many people don't know what those lyrics are because they have no idea what a Casbah is. So their brain just fills in whatever. And I love the idea of where that could go. I think you could have taken it a lot of different places for sure.
Similarly to what I was going to say is where you asked, what is a Casbah? That's kind of a jumping off point with a lot of potential for what is a Casbah? Lots of creative ideas for what the hell this random word is.
Yeah. And like, there could have been a conversation where everybody knew it was Casbah, but they didn't know what Casbah actually meant. Because my question for Jamie when she said that, and maybe y'all know the answer, but is Casbah a thing? I just thought it was the name of a place.
I think it's like a marketplace, like a Middle Eastern marketplace, kind of not a bazaar, but like I think it's something like that, or like the main stretch. I had to look it up because I also thought it was cash box.
Is it really? I mean, because that would be like a soup or you know what I mean? Like I don't.
Mm-hmm.
How fascinating.
I don't remember exactly the context behind it. It's been a couple years since I looked it up. And every time I hear the song, I have to look it up. So after this, I'm going to go Google it again.
Excellent.
Apparently it's a citadel of a North African city.
Oh. So it is a place.
Off.
Yeah. This reminds me too, if you haven't been reading the sort of overview in the learning module, like this one about dialogue, this one's fantastic because a misheard lyric is very much like misheard dialogue. And so thinking of the way that people, I know that you've all had this conversation, but it's so important to have your people not directly answering each other's questions And even if we kind of do, but we don't, in real life, people are always not quite talking to each other. They're talking sort of at each other. And that's a really important step in making your dialogue realistic. And you made me think of it, Fran, because of the way that everybody was sort of laughing at you, but I'm not positive they all knew what a Casbah was. They just knew that you had it wrong, you know? So I think that's a great thing to think about when you're working with your dialogue. Who heard you say cash box instead of Casbah, and then what happens, right? Yeah, that was fantastic. That was a lot of fun. Thanks, Fran. So
That's
Jamie,
a great
you're
segue to mine, because mine has a lot of dialogue, and I am curious whether my dialogue all answers itself, basically.
okay.
So, because I'm a mom of 2 teenage daughters, when you talk about Taylor Swift and mishearing something, I immediately think about mishearing my teenage daughters, and so I didn't go with music at all.
Great.
So, what do you mean she bought a pregnancy test? I heard her tell her best friend she bought a pregnancy test and thank God it was negative. How is it even possible that she could need a pregnancy test? Between sports and school, she has no time. Plus the important fact that she doesn't actually have a boyfriend that we know of, but we trust her to do things. We both know how easily teenagers can get themselves into these situations. Maybe you misheard her, he said, and his voice cracked with desperation, a father's hope. Maybe. My fear lingered in the air. I was that girl, that 15-year-old. She can't be. Should I ask her about it? He looked into my eyes, and we both knew the conversation would be one of the hardest of my life. I've always been afraid this day would come, when I might choose to tell her the thing I've kept secret for so long. Yes, you should ask her. Then she would think I was spying on her. There's worse things for a 15-year-old girl to think than that her mother might be eavesdropping on her conversations. Things like pregnancies and venereal diseases, and knowing whether she's even being safe. You're right. I know you're right. But still, I started to shake.
That was riveting. Okay, everybody.
Meanwhile, my 13-year-old walked into the room while I was reading it, and she's been asleep until now and had no idea what I was talking about and was trying to interrupt me and had no idea I'd be on a Zoom. And so she is freaking out right now. She eavesdropped and misheard and doesn't understand.
Fiction. Fiction. Just say fiction. It's not true. I saw you get nervous and I didn't think it was about the content.
The 13-year-old is my anxiety-ridden one who follows all rules like black and white, and her older sister, who is almost 15, I'm sure she's freaking out right now because she's like, what is going on? So sorry about that.
Well, we'll hurry and finish up so you can go have that conversation, but no. So everybody. That
felt like such a real and personal story. And as Dr. Max said, like I saw you kind of get nervous partway through, and I'm like, oh, this may be like far too real at this moment, but then apparently was for not the reason that we were thinking.
The interesting thing is I just had a daughter in October, and it's not been that same kind of thought process and maybe those same kind of conversations, but that is something that it's like, oh crap, in between 14 to 18 years, I'm going to have to somehow possibly might have this conversation. And it's been a slightly sore subject with my wife because I start freaking out because it's like, what if? And she's like, stop.
She's 4 months old, right? Or 3 months old.
3 going on 4, yes. And it's like, but it's going to be 4 months to 18 years. She's going to be in college next month. Yes.
See, it'll probably feel like it.
Yeah. Seeing my 2 nieces grow up, but yes, I'm saying that your connection I've had a connection with your story.
I think that, Jamie, you did a great job of portraying character relationships, and that's really central to literary writing. I think you really delve into the heart of how people relate to each other and all the emotion involved in that. So well done.
Yeah, as I feel like I might be the baby of the group, but I like don't have any children, but just like being able to like picture like the scenario from like the perspective of like the parent and like their internal like conflict about it was really interesting, as opposed to like in my brain thinking like trying to think back to like if I was younger, like what would I be thinking in this situation, and how like starkly different it would be from like the situation that you're portraying. It was really interesting.
Yes, so your characters really are speaking very directly to each other. But when the topic is that critical, people listen. And so I actually think the fact that they were directly answering each other makes sense, because these are parents talking about a scenario that they know all too well, or at least the mom does. We don't know if she's with the person that she had her child with, but we get the impression that that 15-year-old was born 15 years ago to a 15-year-old. So that makes her only 30, which is super young. And raising your own child as from a 15, I mean, it's just that there's so many things that go along with that. But yes, that dialogue was very directly, they were answering each other. And when the stakes are that high, they often will. The thing to think about that is important anytime you're writing dialogue is that each person, well, there's two things. For one, every character thinks that they are the main character of any story you're writing. And so you have to remember, as they try to crowd in and be like, I'm the main character. Of course, the main character in this one is the mom, thinking that she's overheard this thing, which hopefully she's overheard wrong. And she has, the second thing is that each character has like a desire, something that they're trying to portray in that dialogue. And so this mom is what she really wants is not to have her daughter go through what she went through, even though clearly she loves and wants her daughter. So, it's this awful thing that isn't awful because, right? And so then you already hear the 15-year-old going, well, so do you not want me? I mean, it's going to be awful.
It's interesting that your brain went there, and it's definitely from what I wrote, but the inspiration in part was one of my 3 stories starts on December 14th when the New York Times did an article about Roe v. Wade possibly being overturned. And it's called, A Portrait of Abortion in America. And so actually the discussion she doesn't want to have is about the fact that she had an abortion and that she didn't have the child, and what she's lived with, the grief, the shame, all of it in the years since, hiding things, her parents knowing but not wanting anyone else to know, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
so
that's
it's
great.
Interesting that you took it to this place where she's a young parent, and that's just a whole different place it could go, but it ties directly into a story that I was writing about somebody who chose to wait longer and had the abortion. So that's interesting.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even consider it. And if you know me, I'm a very liberal minded woman about choice and stuff. So, crazy that I didn't go the direction that you're saying, but I think it's because I got the impression that that daughter was somehow related to that choice. And she was, but not in the way that I was picturing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, desires, right? So just be sure that as you're engaging in dialogue, each, how like we accidentally talk over each other a little bit. Your characters are going to want to, and each, because even if they have similar agendas, they're never identical. So just thinking of the ways that they're expressing what matters to them most is, an important part of doing dialogue. Yeah. But this was amazing. I've kept you too long. I'm sorry, we're past 10:30, but thank you so much for being here and being such willing and enthusiastic participants. I felt like so much happened today. And I think when we read and talk about each other, also, we get practicing at what we should be doing in our critical peer reviews, which is hearing the ways that they're using, all of you are using elements of fiction and what's working and what maybe could, be pushed, like Dominique telling Brand, hey, that question was a great jumping off point. That's the kind of thing you can be thinking of in your critical peer reviews, which you're probably done with for this week, but you're going to be doing again in module 5 for what we turn in next week in module 4, which is the first draft of your short story. As a reminder, this short story that you choose for this first draft is it. This is what you're working on for the rest of the course. And if you decide you're not enjoying it and you change it to an entirely different plot with the same characters, that doesn't count. You're actually not doing the job. Clearly, I'm saying this because this has happened to me in this course. And I felt really bad because the person refused to change back. And so the grade was getting lower. And, I mean, it's just frustrating, but it's kind of cool to now hold your feet to the fire. There is so much value in writing this and revising it and revising it. You feel like you have nothing left to revise, but you do. So be sure you know that you're committed when you choose a story, stick with the same story, and then just open your arms up to the revision process. And what I really recommend is after the next revision, I feel like, so we write it in 4, look at it in 5, write it, and then look at it in 7, and then you must write it for 9. Okay, well, anyway, there's a chance to really experiment. Like if you get it really solid now, then do a ton of revision experiments. You can always go back to what you write for this first draft if you like it better. But rather than playing it safe, a lot of times you can really choose to get wild and add some dialogue where it doesn't bother, just go crazy with it. But first the draft, right? Any questions for me or anything about this week before we get going? Let's choke Jamie, sorry.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And actually, we do it again in 2 weeks. Everybody's welcome. The Zoom link stays the same. The time stays the same. I will send out a reminder email. And Jamie and Dominique, if you want to be on that email, you don't have to come, but I'll happily include you. And it really is the same process. And what I usually do is encourage, we do a heavily, I think, sensory focused one. I don't have it open, but we do something that should be able to help you in your revision process, thinking through what you're going to do. If you want to come. And if you don't, that's fine. No hurt feelings. I'm just happy to do something that makes this more real for you. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll end the meeting. Have a great
you so
weekend.
much. You too.
Good luck with your drafts.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.